The king is dead, but long live the king of comics. Hey there, fellow geeks and geekettes. This is the Comic Relief Crusader. Today's rather a special day. Today I'm kind of celebrating Jakob Kurtzberg. If you don't know who Jakob Kurtzberg is, you would know him under a very more well-known, influential name. And that name is Jack Kirby. Today, he was born today, August 28th, 1917. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have most of the characters that we do in DC Comics and Marvel Comics. I mean, just trying to imagine the Marvel Cinematic Universe if it wasn't for him. He was born of Austrian Jewish immigrants back in 1917. Lived in New York, as most people know. Top of that, he was self-taught. He kind of wanted to break away from what his parents were doing, which was working in the garment industry and whatnot. And after a while, especially I believe when he was around 14, he took up a love for art, and he was mostly self-taught. And as the years rolled around, as some of you might know, well, he even joined the military and fought in World War II. And it was due to a lot of that, when he served the short time that he did, that he created most of the characters that we know and love today, to this very day. Yeah, we talk a lot about Stan Lee and whatnot and what he contributed to Marvel and, even a few other little characters here and there that weren't with Marvel. But Jack was called the King of Comics for a reason. I mean, he revolutionized the comic book industry, storytelling. When he and Stan kicked off the Marvel Universe, like exactly 60 years ago, when you think about it, back in 1961. He created hundreds, maybe even thousands of characters, a surprising number of whom have stood the test of time to this day. But who are Jack's best characters? I mean, there are a lot of them out there. I mean, it's a matter of taste, really. There are likely no wrong answers with someone of Jack's prolific talent. But here are my picks. I mean, you got the Uncanny X-Men. He started that. The Incredible Hulk. You have the Mighty Thor, Captain America, the Black Panther, Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, as some of you might remember in DC. And then you have the Silver Surfer, which I love. I've always loved the Silver Surfer. You have the Avengers, which obviously everybody knows from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. DC's The New Gods, and everybody's favorite family, the Fantastic Four. Of all of Jack's creations that he's done, none are more groundbreaking or as innovative as the Fantastic Four. They just weren't a team. They were family. But the magic that of the Fantastic Four weren't just about the members themselves. It was also about their enemies that made up pretty much most of the entire Marvel universe itself. They were Marvel's first family. and with that supporting cast and the concepts that they explored, just made this universe bigger and more flavorful and more exciting, and we have a lot to owe to Jack for creating these multitude of characters, not just in Marvel and DC, but in other comic titles that he created. I mean, after he separated from Marvel and DC, in the early 80s, he did stuff for Pacific Comics, and he also did a few things for Eclipse Comics. And shortly after he passed away in 1994, he got together with Topps Comics, and he created the entire Kirby verse, which was ideas that he had for comics that he just never got around to making. But it was always those things over the years that he drew and explored and everything that just made comics fun. It was always fun to read all the time. His dynamic poses, his covers, everything that screamed Jack is essentially what made comics today. And that's why he'll always be king. Here's a little rare clip that I found of Jack the King Kirby before he passed away. Enjoy.
Mr. Kirby, why do you think your artwork is so popular?
My artwork is popular because it connects with the ordinary person, and they can understand it very easily. And I've always meant it to be so. I've never confined my art to a particular section of humanity. I love people in general. My art reflects it, and that's the way it's always been.
And when did you start actually get your first work published?
Well, I think I began in the animation field, and I did work for small syndicates, which rapidly went out of business, and so I kept to the animation field. I was involved with the Fleischer Studios. I did Betty Boop, and many of the products that the Fleischer brothers were involved with. But that it didn't last too long, and I went on to other things. I did editorial cartoons for, like I said, smaller syndicates. And at that time, there was a lot of turbulence in Europe, and that became material for my cartoons. And I absorbed that material and reflected it in my work. And so I've always tried to do the timely thing. And the timely thing, I think, is what people understand. I try to stay current, and you'll find my work throughout the years has changed with the times and has fit into the times in which it was drawn. Well, my first comic book work, it involved comics that didn't last long until I finally began to work on Captain America. I began to work on the early stuff at Marvel Comics, which is at that time known as Timely Comics. I met my former partner, Joe Simon, at that time, and we began to do very well together. We did work for DC magazines. We did work for Harvey magazines. And generally, I brought home my paycheck and I was quite content. Well, romance comics was an innovation. I passed the newsstands every night on my way to deliver stuff to Marvel. And these love magazines would be hanging on the newsstands, and I thought nothing of it until one night it suddenly dawned on me that the love pulps were covering the newsstands, and I realized that there were no romance magazines in comics. And that's when Joe Simon and I began to turn out magazines like My Date, Young Romance, and similar magazines, and we got a very, very good response. Well, the monster comics were creatures of the 50s, and the monsters were not part of the comic field. Well, we're not seen in comics for quite some time until the 50s came, and I realized that there were no monster comics at all at that time, and I felt that that would be a new turn in the field, and of course it became that. I began to do monster comics. They sold very well, and I felt justified in my judgment of the times. Well, the Fantastic Four was another team adventure, and it gave me a chance to draw teenagers once more. And of course, Reed Richards was their mentor, and the characters and I had a wonderful time. I put them through all kinds of adventures. They were spectacular characters. Reed Richards could stretch himself for a mile, and the characters themselves would create the situations, and it was a kind of a series that became a classic in the field. Captain America is a product of his time. At that time, we were on the brink of war. Hitler was grabbing everything in sight, and Captain America just had to come into being because patriotic fervor was everywhere. And so Captain America became the symbol of everything that was happening in America. And of course, I had Captain America beating up on Hitler on the covers of the comic magazines, and Captain America breaking into Nazi strongholds. And he did those daring things which Americans dreamt of doing and were on the brink of doing, but we were still biding our time. And of course, the war finally happened, and Captain America still blossomed, still sold, and became the symbol of what America stood for, and he still is. My character's relationship with the reader is my own relationship. I love people in general, and that's reflected in my characters. My characters are very human, and the next guy recognizes himself in any character I draw, no matter how fantastic that character is, the next guy will always relate to him because despite the fact that he's incapable, the next guy is incapable of doing these superhuman tasks, his motivations and the character's motivations are exactly alike. They're human reactions, and the reader recognizes that, and he recognizes that factor even in the villains.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoy that. Please subscribe and like the channel. I have more content coming. Don't be shy. Leave a comment in the link below and spread what I'm doing. Catch you later. This is the Comic Relief Crusader. Over and out.